Okay, good morning. I'm Carol Jarsepe. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Frederick County, and welcome to the 2021 Frederick County Legislative Forum. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that encourages informed and active citizens' participation in government. As an organization, the League does not support or oppose candidates for public office or any party or elected officials. The League works to increase citizens' understanding of major public policy issues. Each year, the Frederick County League hosts an elected official forum to provide an opportunity for League members and guests to hear firsthand the elected officials' accomplishments, priorities, and goals. This forum is being recorded for inclusion on the League's website and Facebook page. Unfortunately, we're not able to go live again this morning for some reason. This is an open discussion forum, and there will be an opportunity for the elected officials to respond to questions. If attendees have any questions, they will be posting them on our Facebook page, hopefully. We do have some questions from membership. All of the Frederick County officials were invited to this forum, and I want to thank the elected officials who are present for their time today, as we know you all have another meeting at 10 o'clock. So we are joined today by Senator Ron Young, Delegate Karen Lewis Young, Delegate Carol Cream, Delegate Ken Kerr, Delegate Pepe, County Executive Jen Gardner, County President MC Keegan-Air, Council Member Jerry Donald, Council Member Jessica Fitzwater. Hopefully she will join soon. Council Member Kai Hagan and Council Member Steve Mckay. And now let me introduce to you our timer, Rosemary Ortman.
Hi, folks.
Hello. Each official will have 4 minutes to talk about their accomplishments in 2021, priorities and goals for 2022. Let me also introduce Mary Beth Cocker, who is Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Frederick County, and will introduce our elected officials. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Carol. And I do want to thank you, Carol, for all the hard work that you've done in this extraordinarily difficult year. I want to acknowledge all of the hard effort that has gone into everything you've done for the League and the community. So thank you. As Carol noted, each candidate is going to have 4 minutes to talk about their accomplishments in 2021 and their priorities and goals for 2022. We'll start with our delegation. Senator Young, what would you like us to know about your accomplishments and your objectives?
Well, I'm not going to dwell too much on accomplishments because they're in the past, but you know, I think we accomplished quite a bit in a strange session last year, and we had quite a bit that I guess we didn't agree with the governor on, which we'll be discussing next week. I don't think we're going to go through that whole list, but we'll probably sit down and go through the list and come up with priorities. One of the big items we looked at was police reform. We had differences with the House, and differences. The bill that passed had differences with the governor. I agreed with a few of his things, and we're going to try to work something out and get some reasonable police reform through. This coming year, you know, in terms of personal bills, I have had one in for several years that the former president opposed, that I'm feeling fairly confident we'll get through this year. And that's allowing the fraternal clubs to have the instant lottery machines. And I put that bill in both to help those clubs, and it would produce, as it grows, $1 million to $2 million a year to help homeless veterans. We're building a Veterans Regional Center here in Frederick, trying to deal with veterans and their problems from beginning to end, and housing is part of that. We lose 22 veterans a day in this country to suicide. It's a shame that we can't reach those. I've known a couple of here that were really good people, but just couldn't deal with life when they got back. So I'm hoping that we can deal with that. Some minor ones, but important to me. If people join the Peace Corps, born in Maryland, grow up in Maryland, join the Peace Corps, when they come home and they want to enter finishing college in Maryland or a master's degree, they're required to pay out-of-state tuition, though they've been a Maryland citizen their whole life, except when they were volunteering to help the country. So I want to get that straightened out. I think it's wrong. I've had a bill in that, again, I hope we've worked out the problems on, but to deal with children that have seizures in school. Most schools are not equipped to deal with that situation when it occurs. So that's Brendan and Zach. Delegate Kerr will probably may talk about that. We have it cross-filed together. I'm trying to restore first responders designations to the Park Rangers Association. They are now police officers, and we feel in emergency situations ought to be able to deal with those things. Another bill in, and I'll let Delegate Lewis Young talk about that, but it's a threat against public officials. Also have one in to require a certain amount of physical activity for kids in school, which I think is equally important to a very important part of their education, and want to deal with that. I moved to the Budget Committee last year, and will serve my last year there. And as usual, I'm going to try to bring as much money back to Frederick as I can for various organizations that need help here. We always have more requests than we have money, and but I'm gonna do all I can for Frederick and the state as a whole.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Senator Young. Thank you very much.
That's good. Thank you.
Delegate Carol Lewis Young.
Are muted.
Are you muted?
Did you say Carol or Karen?
Karen.
Oh, okay.
Karen.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. Most of my bills and accomplishments from the past align with your priority for increased access to affordable and quality health care. I would say overall, the greatest accomplishment of the General Assembly last year was to provide relief to those individuals that suffered the most from COVID in terms of unemployment insurance and housing and food security. I think that was probably our greatest achievement. But on an individual basis, the efforts where I led, one was the ability for pharmacists to administer injectable medicines for mental health challenges as well as addiction. And this year I'm planning on expanding that bill to include STIs as well. Another bill that was passed last year was increased funding for organ donation, in particular kidney donations. Those donations have been going down over recent years, and we felt that in order to compensate the individual for their out of work and hotel expenses, we needed to raise that limit. Also, I was appointed as the chair for a work group that would expand services for individuals with disabilities who want to direct their healthcare and their services. And that work group will be making its final recommendation next month. Looking ahead to 2022, some of the aspects of that work group might turn into legislation. Senator Young mentioned a bill. It's not to protect public officials, it's public health officials who have received threats, particularly during the pandemic. Some other major bills are suicide prevention. The 988 hotline will go into effect in July of 22, and my bill will establish initial funding for that. I have another bill that will provide support for Alzheimer's caregivers. There's a lot of data and information that shows us that the caregivers are so stressed by their responsibilities that their mental and physical health are suffering as well. We need to get them more support and information. And finally, another priority bill, an outpatient civil commitment facility. Baltimore has tested this concept. I'd like to bring it to Frederick. It is another option for an individual with severe addiction or mental health challenges, other than being hospitalized or just out on the street without care. I have about 7 other bills, but not the time to go into them. So I've sent you all a flyer, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to review them. If you have any questions on them, please don't hesitate to give me a call. And thank you once again for continuing to conduct this very informative forum. Thanks.
Thank you. Delegate Carol Krim. Are you muted, ma'am?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's good to see everybody. I know we're all a little foggy this early. I am this early in the morning. Maybe it's not early for you, but it's early for me. So I'll start with last year. I had a very significant bill on teleworking that came from the pandemic. And it did have the speaker's endorsement, and it was difficult to get through at the end, and we had to just pull out all the stops and with the Senate, but it did work out. It passed the Senate unanimously, and of course it had passed the House. So we do have a teleworking bill that all government entities need to put in a teleworking policy. We also reached out to the private sector and to incentivize them to put in place a teleworking policy. And how does this benefit Frederick County? Well, it benefits Frederick County. Hopefully we can get some vehicles off the highways and also reduce emissions. So something I haven't heard talked about yet is climate change, which is a huge issue. And we did not move that last year, climate change in a comprehensive manner. So I'm hoping this year we will have climate change bills. I worked on one bill during the interim with Delegate Dana Stein, who is Vice Chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee, on the Community Financing Conservation Act. Financing Conservation Act, and it's to encourage our looking at the blue infrastructure, as they call it now, which is water, and the green infrastructure, which is the rural areas and the forest, etc., and to make sure that those buffers are maintained. And this was a very significant effort. When they asked me to do it, I thought we'd talk about a couple meetings here and there, but that's not how it worked out. There was a lot of meetings that we went through that bill almost line by line. And I think we have a very good bill. We had a lot of advocates work on the bill with us. And so just watch that move through the legislature. I think it will be successful. So let me move on because I know I'm running out of time. So this year I have a cybersecurity training bill, and it's pre-filed, and it's been worked on with many advocates. And what it does is that everybody who interacts with the state computer infrastructure will have to have training for the individual worker to identify ransomware, etc., because that's how these bad actors get into our computer systems. And it will not only be the government sector, it would also be the private sector, because we have the private sector that interacts with state computers when they bid on projects. So the Department of Information Technology has provided lots of language for the bill and recognizes its importance. And I don't think we're talking about local government or the private sector having to invest a lot of money in this. These training programs will be posted. Okay, I need to be quiet now. So I have more out. Obviously, we all have more to talk about, but I appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Ken Kerr.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you here this morning. Like Delegate Lewis Young, I serve on Health and Government Operations, so a lot of the work I do in Annapolis revolves around healthcare affordability and access and prescription drug costs. I also serve on the State Oversight Committee for nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and I've been appointed to the Joint Committee for Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotechnology. So this should be a big year for cybersecurity, and I expect to be asked to take lead sponsorship on some of those cybersecurity bills. Last year, I introduced 6 bills. I got 3 of them passed. The other 3 are good bills. We're going to bring them back up again this year. They just needed a little bit more work. The first one was a prescription drug labeling bill. Right now, when a pharmacist dispenses a medication, they're required by law to put the expiration date as 1 year from the date the medicine was expired, even if the manufacturer's expiration date is months or years longer. So this bill just says if the medicine is dispensed in the manufacturer's original packaging, the pharmacist can use the expiration date provided by the manufacturer rather than the expiration date of 1 year from the date of dispensing. I also had a very important bill last year that provides healthcare subsidies for young Marylanders age 18 to 34. It's a 2-year pilot. These 18 to 34-year-olds make up the majority of the 6% of Marylanders that are uninsured. And for those young people making up to $51,000, it can bring the cost of their healthcare premiums down to as low as $1 a month in some cases. So we hope to get all of these young people covered by insurance, and that should bring the cost of everyone's insurance down by as much as 2.5% if this is successful. The third bill I got through last year was a property tax credit for small businesses during a state of emergency. It allows counties to forgive property taxes for businesses who suffer losses because business properties were either unused or underused during a state of declared emergency. This year, I'll be working on the bill Senator Young alluded to. It's a Seizure Safe Schools bill, where we are asking that all people in public schools who work with students be aware of the symptoms of a seizure and know how to respond should a child in their charge have a seizure during the school time. 1 in 10 people are going to have a seizure at some point in their lives, usually before their 25th birthday. So the likelihood of this happening during school hours is really quite high. Another one is abandoned property, that it just says that if, if you have a piece of, if you have an asset in a bank and you don't touch it for 3 years, it's considered abandoned and it's turned over to the state. All this bill says is that if it has more than $10,000 in it, a first-class letter is not sufficient, that the asset owner should be notified by a certified mail return receipt. And the third one I'm working on with Senator Kagan is a statewide 311. Up to 35% of the calls that go into 911 are non-emergencies. A tree fell on my car, where can I get a COVID vaccination? They're important, but they're not emergencies. Statewide 311 will provide a one phone number place where anybody can access government services, and 911 can easily transfer those calls over should that be the case. And I see I am out of time.
Thank you very much. Delegate Pippi.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. So last year I was fortunate to have 3 bills passed. One dealt with cell site warrants. Essentially, the bill made it easier for judges to sign off on warrants as part of my effort to support our law enforcement community. Another bill dealt with estates and trusts, and it prohibited unscrupulous practices against children who are guardians, or it's a guardianship program, and also disabled adults. And so it prohibited people that are in a guardianship program from essentially taking assets and funds and giving it to themselves without oversight. And the other one is the sports wagering. I put in a specific bill to give long shots a license, and they ended up taking that forward. So we all know about that. This year, I have pre-filed 3 bills. One has to do with stalking. So for example, if you are put on a protective order and you continue to stalk, the repercussions are the same as if you were not on a protective order. So we're gonna change that. I'm doing that with Vanessa Atterbury. Another bill supports veterans. Currently, if you are a veteran of the Iraq or Afghanistan wars, there is a scholarship program for your next of kin, which I think is important because we honor our veteran service by supporting their kids. However, it doesn't apply to some other situations, as if you had a stepchild, for example, that you also supported that lived in your household. And so there are several other veterans programs that allow that. This bill would bring that program in a line there. And then another one deals with visual surveillance. Currently, if someone, let's say, places a camera in a changing room, the repercussions of that, if you were to do it against children, is the same as if you did it against adults. And so what this bill does, it makes the, again, repercussions for doing it against children much more severe. And that is more in line with the child pornography bill. I had a child pornography bill passed 2 years ago. This is kind of a loophole because you could have someone who essentially has visual surveillance of children in vulnerable situations, and they could argue that it's a visual surveillance issue and not a child pornography production issue. And so we're going to straighten that out. This has been in line with the last 3 years where I've supported legislation that protects the most vulnerable people in our community, children, dealing with domestic violence and other areas. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have passed, statewide legislation each year while in office. Also, we did a funding request for Newmarket last year to deal with their stormwater management. So I was proud that that passed and we're supporting them. We've done a lot of streetscape programs in our community and in my district, but it's also caused supplemental issues with stormwater drainage. And so we're continuing to support them. I'm probably doing well on time here. So I'll just say, look, it's been great to support our community. With a lot of this legislation, I think if you have an opportunity to go to Annapolis and put in something that makes a tangible difference, protecting people that will last a long term, I think that's an honorable thing to do. And I've been grateful to have that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Celebrity. Sir, are you muted? Could you unmute yourself, sir?
Doesn't there to also be on video, so why don't we go to the next speaker? And I think that is County Executive Gardner, I believe.
Yes. County Executive Gardner.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and speak with you today. The accomplishment I want to highlight is an accomplishment with the county council. And it actually is legislation passed in 2020, but it went into place here in 2021. And that was the increase in revenue to the ag preservation programs through the recordation fee. We have currently preserved about 70,000 acres of agriculture in our county. And this bill generated about $7 million for ag preservation, which we will be allocating soon. And I think it will really accelerate ag preservation. A small portion of those dollars went to an agriculture innovation grant program, which we just got a Maryland Department of Planning award for. And that's really to help farmers keep their farms economically viable. A portion went to ag innovation grants, which to rural historic preservation grants, which I also received an award for from Preservation Maryland. And we've had great interest in it to keep our historic barns and other properties in rural areas preserved. And we also invested some money to support first-time home buyers in partnership with the United Way. So I think that legislation is going to leave a lasting legacy of agriculture to Frederick County. And I think it's going to be something that serves the test of time. I will be releasing the state of the county at the end of next week. And I think that's a place for you to see some of our other accomplishments of the year. This year, we have introduced 4 bills to the delegation. You can find them on our webpage under Legislative Affairs. I will go over 3 of these. I assume Councilman Mckay is going to do his bill. The first one is a change to the Natural Resources Bill for the Forest Resource Ordinance. And that would restore the forest banking program, which has been widely used by farmers and property owners in Frederick County and preserved hundreds of acres of forest. And I think that was inadvertently taken out of the bill last year. And it would also allow a longer period of time for municipalities and counties to spend their fee in lieu money. That request came from the town of Emmitsburg. The second bill is a request that came from Heritage Frederick. And it would give a portion of the marriage ceremony fee, $15 to them to preserve marriage records over time. And this would add us to 9 other counties in Maryland that do this. And then the third is a vacant burial lot bill, which is kind of complicated and will be controversial, which will basically give a cemetery owner the right to, if they cannot notify somebody about a vacant burial lot, to resell that lot. If that family member or person comes back in the future, they have to either give them the same lot if it's still available, give them another lot of comparable value, or pay them for it. That may not sound controversial, but I expect it to be controversial. I want to thank our delegation for their efforts to support and introduce bills to protect elected officials and some of our administrative leaders against threats of harm. This has been a real issue during COVID, and elected officials currently have some protection, but health officers, elections officials, and some others desperately need that protection. Upcoming in the county, I'd ask you to pay attention to what we're doing with our ARPA money, in addition to continuing our vaccination efforts and stabilizing our business community and others. There's some really great initiatives there. We'll be introducing locally some climate initiatives. On January, I'll be introducing a bill to workshop for the county council to create the police accountability board here in Frederick County, which affects all the law enforcement agencies in the county, including the municipal police forces. And I'll be introducing some ag initiatives as well. So there'll be a lot upcoming in 2022. So that is my summary today. And we do have a bill that Steve Mckay will, I think, speak to about appointments to the Board of Ed.
Very good. Thank you so much. Council President, MC Keegan-Air.
Sorry, 8 o'clock morning meetings. I can't find my microphone to unmute myself here. Thank you so much for having us this morning. I appreciate you spending time with us so we can highlight some of the things that we have done and some of our upcoming issues and legislative initiatives that we'll be working on for this year. First thing I have to highlight, in addition to what the county executive said as far as the legislative package, we will be probably having Councilmember Donald speak to his position statement. Councilwoman Fitzwater will speak to her position statement. Councilmember Mckay will speak to his legislative initiative. So I'm going to let them cover those that are in the package. This past year, we were able to stand up a committee to meet our requirements in the charter. It was the Compensation Review Commission. That commission reported back to us, and we made a decision about compensation for future county executives and county council members. The other commission that we stood up this year and has already completed their work, and now it's in our lap to finish up, is the Redistricting Commission. And I'm fairly impressed. We are one of the few counties in Maryland that were apparently has been able to do this without creating a lot of kerfuffle about how those lines will be redrawn. Our commission was able to look at the population numbers and find a fairly easy fix. And the council took public comment on that proposal on Tuesday of last week, and we had no one call in to comment about it. So hopefully that will move through quickly, and we will not become like some of the other counties around the state that are having huge disagreements over our redistricting. The other things that we have been able to accomplish in the last year was we have handled quite a few what the administration likes to call their cleanup bills, handling things like retirement accounts and building code updates and things like that, which we will continue to do. And those are things that I usually handle as the president of the council. I have decided on this council that if the county executive or her administration wants to move forward legislation that deals with specific issues or subject areas that we have council members who are very interested in, I don't introduce those. I ask that she work with those council members so that they can introduce those pieces of legislation, which I think has helped everybody understand a little bit more about issues, because I'm not a subject area expert on all the issues that come before the council. Just for your information, I not only sit on the Maryland Association of Counties Legislative Committee, where, yes, the county executive is right. We have one as one of our policy initiatives for this year, the bill to protect people who are not in elected position. Our Board of Election people, our Board of Election staff. I will tell you, I sit on the Board of Elections, and they are very concerned about their safety. They are installing security devices on their building, complete with cameras, locks on the doors, and they even want to have an emergency button that they can push if someone is threatening them in the building. So that's going to be a biggie. So anyway, Mckay is going to do that. I am the chairperson of the land use subcommittee on Mckay. I also sit on the National Association of Counties, where I sit on several of their committees, including the Energy, Environment, and Climate Policy Commission, the Air Quality Commission, and the Chesapeake Bay Water Resources Policy Commission. So I'm like spread all over the place, but that's okay. I just keep pushing caffeine, and I will get through this. And hopefully we are representing Frederick County effectively and in a positive manner around the state and nationally. And I will leave it at that. I will be working on some of my initiatives again this year on solar and on addressing some building codes I'm working with staff on. So I'm going to leave it at that. Yep.
Okay.
Next person.
We appreciate it. I see that Delegate Celebrity has joined us by video. So, sir, would you like to discuss your accomplishments in 2021 and your goals for 2022? You're muted, sir. Could you unmute yourself? I'm sorry, we're still not able to hear you. Why don't we get back with you, sir? And let's.
You okay now?
Excellent. Thank you.
We've
Go
been
for
having,
it.
thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We've been having some electronic problems, and I would suggest it's probably operator error. But
We
in any
feel
event,
your pain, believe us.
well, basically, ladies and gentlemen, I have been working on the issue of nurses and the issue of criminal law based on activities that have been occurring in the emergency rooms with nurses. And we have legislation that has been drafted at this point that deals with any attack on a nurse in an emergency room. It's not a misdemeanor, it's a felony. So I've been working on that for 2 years. I have talked to several people who are in judiciary. They are very, very interested in this bill. And I'm hopeful between, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue, this is a safety issue, that we can get that passed this year. Secondly, we are looking at the issue of, it's a very sensitive issue, I know that, and controversial, I'm fully aware of that. And that is secondly, using the concept of a sonogram before any individual, female obviously, would consider terminating the baby. Those are two of the things that I pushed last year, and I'm pushing them this year. Last year, we had quite a bit of success in terms of driving under the influence of liquor. Basically, my bill was taken over. That's not the right word. It was adopted by others and passed. I don't care who gets credit for it. It was a good bill. It's passed. That was good. So basically, interlocking. When, ladies and gentlemen, you get into that car, and unfortunately you've had too much to drink, there was nothing to stop you. So we had introduced the mandatory Interlock Bill that has passed as well. So basically that's it. Now, as far as what we're doing this year, the two bills that I have drafted are just as I had explained at the very beginning. That is protecting nurses and also the issue of sonograms prior to any major procedure. Thank you for the opportunity to express this. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Council Member Jerry Donald, would you please let us know your goals and objectives?
Thank you very much for the invitation today to participate. MC mentioned something I asked the state legislature to move forward a position paper. Every county and municipality has to deal with something called constant yield. It's a very confusing concept. Many people think that if a budget adopts constant yield, it will freeze people's property taxes. It will not. Even people running for office right now, I see have put out videos saying they'll freeze taxes by adopting constant yield. It won't do that. So it's an outdated thing that needs to disappear from state law. The state doesn't even do it. They have a property tax and they don't deal with constant yield. They just make municipalities and counties deal with it. So that's one thing. Secondly, let's see, I've got an impact fee bill that's been moving along now and is going to come to third reading this week. I've been active on boards and commissions. We are trying to finish up the park in Middletown, the renovation. On the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, we hope to break ground on a trail between Frederick and Walkersville sometime this spring or summer. We're also in the design phase for a trail that goes south from Frederick down along Ballinger Creek Pike and eventually will reach the Potomac River. So hopefully the goal in the long run is to have a trail that goes all the way through Frederick County north to south. And then we hope to spread the system out so that we have trails that connect our parks. And that would be a wonderful thing, I think, for the county. It would be great for economic development as far as tourism goes, because that would attract people. Once you have a system of multiple trails, you attract a lot of riders and walkers and people like that. I think it'd be wonderful. We opened Othello Park, and if you've been down to the Jefferson Brunswick area, that's a beautiful park. That's something I was a part of. Let's see, where do we go from here? I'm hoping to introduce a bill soon, if Kai and I can work things out on getting an actual Board of Health that is composed of people other than elected officials and a health officer. I think it's time we move forward in that direction. Yeah, that's about all I can think of for right now, but I hope that those things are positive things for the county, and I hope that we can continue to move Frederick County forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jessica Fitzwater.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see everybody this morning, and thank you as always for giving us the opportunity to listen to your all's priorities and listen to one another and share some of the things we've been up to. In terms of this past year, a few bills that I introduced right at the end of last year that have gone into effect this year that I'm pleased to see moving forward include updates to our equal employment opportunity policy, where we have now added sexual orientation, gender identity, and genetic information as protected groups, and updated some language, including replacing physical and mental handicap with the word disability. We also added in provisions, one which implements something that passed at the state level to ensure that prior salary history is not a consideration for employment. Delegate Young is, Lewis Young is nodding. I know she has been working on that for a long time. And also that criminal history is not a requirement for, on an application for employment in the county, trying to remove barriers and just improve access for folks who want to apply for employment in the county. I also introduced a bill that passed to establish an Immigrant Affairs Commission that passed in February. And we have now appointed Jan, County Executive Gardner appointed, and we confirmed her appointments to the commission, except for a student member and a member representing the city, which because they just had an election and they haven't all been sworn in yet, we have to wait a little bit on that front. But that group will be getting started likely in the new year. And I'm really excited to see a lot of the members of our community having a more formal voice, bringing issues that affect the immigrant population to the county, and also for the county to have the communication channel back. I'm sure that Councilmember Hagan will talk about the legislation he worked on with County Executive Gardner on equity and inclusion, but I did want to highlight that. And we just hit the year mark of Mr. Michael Hughes, who is the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, and that's been codified now in the legislation. So I'll let Councilmember Hagan talk about that, but I'm looking forward to working with him also through the Immigrant Affairs Commission. Coming up, I want to thank Councilmember Donald for bringing back his impact fee bill that he briefly mentioned. And I have a small amendment to that that's going to, it has to do with affordable housing that's in a land trust, and making sure that folks who purchase a property, a home that's in a land trust, they don't owe that impact fee back to the county unless the property is on land that's no longer in the land trust. So it just helps to make sure things stay affordable for those families. And moving forward, I'm working currently on some legislation with some county staff having to do with event venues and also agritourism on small farms. Obviously, especially with the pandemic, people are really interested in being outside and supporting local. So there's a lot of new opportunities for some of our farmers, but we need to make sure that those have the proper regulations to protect public health and safety as we also move forward and are responsive to how the economy is changing for one of our biggest industries in the county. Lastly, with the position statement that's in the package that we sent to the delegation, it's a position statement supporting action on climate change. Council member Hagan and I co-sponsored a resolution last year that established a climate emergency mobilization work group. They spent a year, over 50 volunteers from our community that are experts in many areas, and provided us with an extensive report with recommendations for how the county can move forward. And so we want to see our delegation support statewide action on climate change. The Climate Solutions Now Act did not pass last year, but we know that there's going to be multiple bills that impact that in this upcoming session. And we are hoping to see our delegation support bills that will help conserve open space and help us move forward on climate resiliency. Thank you for the opportunity to share this morning.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hagan.
Morning. I've had a bad connection. Hopefully it lasts pretty good for the next 4 minutes. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I appreciate the opportunity to get this information out from everyone here. It's also nice to be able to listen to the reports from the county executive and my fellow council members so far and agree with everything that they've been talking about. That is, and support those efforts. So that's great. The one thing I wanted to start with, Jessica mentioned a bit about the climate emergency mobilization working group. The bill passed in the prior year, or the resolution, but the work was done all throughout much of this year, and they did produce this report. It is remarkable. It's world-class in terms of what local communities have done on this almost anywhere. It had tens of thousands, I don't know, more than 10,000 hours of really well-spent volunteer time putting it together. I strongly recommend that everybody go to Mobilize Frederick if you haven't read it yet, and download the report. It's in 2 sections. The documentation is extensive, but the recommendations are important. And if we're going to do this and treat this as the emergency that it is, a lot of the legislative efforts at the state level and at the county level will be in line with some of these priorities and the recommendations of the working group. But it's very detailed. I really encourage people to read it. She also briefly mentioned the equity and inclusion legislation. I started working almost 2 years ago on this, and joined with County Executive Gardner, who had been taking a number of initiatives along this area to sponsor the equity and inclusion legislation that passed very recently, which codifies the Office of Equity and Inclusion and creates a commission. I'm excited about it for many reasons. I think it'll be very important, but one of them is that it's going to make sure that we're creating a review process for legislation, and that future legislative proposals will come with an impact statement on equity and inclusion, so that while advisory in nature, it will always be part of the discussion. It will be a lens through which we are looking at legislative matters, much as we hope to do on climate, and have said that we would, looking at Livable Frederick and the emergency resolution language about climate change. Jerry mentioned briefly the Board of Health. We're definitely moving on that. The goal is to essentially, the default Board of Health, if a county has not created one, is the public health officer, the county executive, and the county council. And we need to replace that now formally with a Board of Health that is comprised primarily of health experts, public health experts, medical experts, and other people in those fields, as well as some additional representatives of some of the broader community interests that can be affected by these things, and you should be hearing about that soon. There's legislation I'm supporting and co-sponsoring or working on with Steve Mckay, and I'll let him talk about that. One is some APFO amendments, adequate public facilities amendments related to traffic, and he'll have some details, I'm sure. Property tax credit extending, one that we offered to veterans, and I'll let him get into that. A lot of what we do as council members, though, isn't just legislation. It's how we move and support and argue for and hopefully collectively pass, things like, the budget or Livable Frederick or other things like that. And the implementation of Livable Frederick, which is, a marvelous comprehensive plan that was put in place after a lengthy public period of work, is continuing with the Sugarloaf area and the South Frederick Triangle. The Sugarloaf one's been getting some attention, but people should pay attention to the South Frederick corridor, which is a major redevelopment opportunity, and I'm out of time. So the only other thing I'll add is that a top priority, I think for all of us, I hope this year, is going to be education funding. We've all seen how important that is right now, and Frederick County is still at the bottom of the state when it comes to per pupil funding, even with the real progress that we've made in the last few years. So we all need to prioritize that.
Thank you. Thank you. And now our final speaker is the aforementioned council member, Steve Mckay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. So everybody's touched on a number of things that I'm going to talk about, but maybe I'll add a little bit of detail. So first and foremost, I was very pleased to bring forward and have passed, and I'll thank Councilmember Jerry Donald for working with me on this one, This is a school construction mitigation fee bill. This was one of my priorities when I ran for office, and I was glad to actually get it done. School construction mitigation fee, for those of you who aren't aware of it, that's a fee that developers promised to pay when they were approved back in the 2011-2014 timeframe to build new homes into areas with overcrowded schools. And this was supposed to provide additional fees to help us actually catch up and build the schools. The problem was that from pretty much 2013 on, the fees were allowed to lag behind the actual cost of building schools. And there were a few attempts to correct this over the years. Unfortunately, they didn't go forward or were approved. So we got it done last year, and I was very pleased about that, because this brings the fees up closer in line with what the actual cost to build schools are, which now allows us to collect more funds so that we can actually build those schools. So very pleased to get that done. Had two initiatives regarding veterans. First, we got passed a disabled veterans property tax credit bill. This is something that was following through on what the legislature did a few years back. Very pleased to have the support of council members Fitzwater and Hagan and Council Vice President Blue. This provides for a two-tier property tax credit for veterans that have VA disability ratings of 50% and higher. 50 to 74% is a 25% property tax credit. Over 75% is a 50% property tax credit. The next veterans initiative is something that we've workshopped. I'll be introducing it on Tuesday, and I hope to get it accomplished early in the next year. And this is for our retired service members property tax credit. And this bill will expand the eligibility criteria for our existing tax credit by introducing additional populations of service members, including their surviving spouses, based upon legislation passed by Annapolis in 2020, as well as removing the income means test from our current tax credit. So, and I'm very pleased to be working with Councilmember Hagan and Council members Dacey and Vice President Blue on that initiative. So I have good thoughts about that going forward. There was mention previously of the bill that the delegation will be working with us on for vacancies in the Board of Ed. This is actually the third of a three-part initiative. Just over a year ago, the voters overwhelmingly approved two charter amendments that allow for vacancies within the first year of the term for, in the earlier initiative, the county executive and the county council. It allows the voters the opportunity to elect the replacement for the final 2 years. This is the analogous bill for Board of Ed. It's pretty much the same terms, a little bit of a difference because we elect Board of Ed members every 2 years, but it's the same concept. If we have a vacancy in the first year, we do a temporary appointment, and then we allow the voters to choose who fills the seat for the final 2 years. So that, of course, we brought that forward the last two, legislative years for a couple different reasons. It didn't happen. We think that we've got that straightened out, and it will go forward this year. Mention two quick things. APFO in terms of this year. I know I'm out of time. That last 5 seconds goes by so quick. So the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, we're doing a top to bottom look on that. Have a couple of good meetings with staff. Primary objective is going to be to strengthen our traffic mitigation, how we measure traffic impacts from new developments and what we ask for in return in terms of mitigation. I'm also looking at some amendments to the zoning ordinance in a couple of different areas, but since I'm out of time, we'll just have to hold on that. But thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I just noticed it's my turn. Thank you again, County Executive Gardner, County Council and delegation members. We're going to start with our questions and answers. We have a few minutes, so let's try to keep the answers at about 1 minute, because I'm not sure how many of you are going to answer those questions. And I know you all have another meeting to go to, so I'd like to give you a break. The first question is on redistricting, and that really applies mostly to the delegation, as we discussed earlier. And Ms. Council Member Keegan mentioned our redistricting in the county is going pretty well. So let's focus on the redistricting statewide. So a virtual joint redistricting public hearing is scheduled for Monday, December 6th, to hear several emergency bills on the congressional district plans before the General Assembly. Senate Bill and House Bill 1 and 2, Senate Bill 1 proposes map recommended by the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission, and Senate Bill 2 proposed by the administration and the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission. Do you think that any of the redistricting map realistically represents the citizens of Frederick County? Why and why not? Let's start with Karen Young. As chair of the delegation, you get first.
Oh, okay. Both maps have their positives and both maps have their negatives. I think that the legislative map is certainly an improvement over the past. I have been asked before this which map I'm going to approve, and I will repeat my answer, which is I'm not sure yet. I don't make a decision on whether or not I'm going to support a bill until I've heard all of the arguments. And I think next week we'll have plenty of opportunities to hear all of the arguments. I still have many outstanding questions that remain to be answered. And at the end of the day, I think we'll have a map that constitutes, I hope we have a map that constitutes elements of both maps that are have been submitted.
Thank you. Senator Young, I did skip you. I should have gave you first choice, but thank you. Can you please tell us what you think?
Thank you. Well, I am serving on the redistricting committee that's going to review maps. I'm still open to looking at both. I prefer the legislative map, but I'm sure we'll make some changes in it. I think we have excellent representation in Congress presently, and I hope that we'll have a map that continues to give us excellent representation. Frederick falls in an unusual place in all this, in that all of Western Maryland has to be in one district. By Western Maryland, I mean the 3 counties to the west of us. But it then does come into Frederick County, and where we make up the rest can go a lot of directions. As we've grown, the size of our district shrinks. Some people say, oh, Montgomery County, none of Montgomery County should be part of us, but other than a 10-year period, most of history, a good portion of Montgomery County has been part of the 6th district. It's not an unusual situation. So where we draw the lines becomes very interesting to get to the population that we need. And, I will, again, take a look at both. I'd lean more towards working with the legislative one, but I'm open to what we hear, and if there are improvements that can be made, we'll look at them.
Thank you, Senator Young. I noticed Delegate Pepe has his hand up, so I'm going to let him speak next. But if you want to chime in on this question, can you please raise your hand? That way I can I'll allow you some time to speak as well. Delegate Pepe, next. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, look, gerrymandering has been an issue throughout our country. There are many states that have participated in this very undemocratic process, but Maryland has also participated in it. And I think this year, in line with the League of Women Voters priorities, you know, we have an opportunity to straighten that out. Unfortunately, the legislative version of the congressional map has been drawn to almost exclude all Republican representatives out of Maryland. And it's very partisan. It's very unfortunate. I am not going to be able to support a map that basically excludes Republican representatives from our state. I think it's wrong, regardless of what Texas and North Carolina and some of these other states are doing. I don't live there. I don't represent those states. I represent Maryland, and I do my best to represent the best interests of all my constituents, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, doesn't matter. But it is very clear that gerrymandering is still going on, and I hope the League of Women Voters will stand up and speak up over the next week as we try to resolve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Krim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So redistricting is a challenging role that the legislature has, and we do it every 10 years. And populations change. So extreme Western Maryland lost population. Frederick County gained population. That has to be accommodated in a plan. So what I look forward to is looking at the state as a whole, doing redistricting as compact as possible. And it's going to be difficult for us in Western Maryland just because of the loss of population in extreme Western Maryland. And also making things as competitive as possible. Are we going to have districts that are more Democrat than Republican? Well, yes, because that is the registration in Maryland. So, but I do look forward to looking at the maps as presented and see how we can achieve as much compactness as possible, and also looking at competitiveness. And I think that would achieve the goals of the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands up on this specific question, so I will move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there are other ones. Okay, Ms. Delegate Ciliberti, can please unmute?
Come on.
Okay,
Oh, you're muted again. You just unmuted and then you're muted again. Sorry. Go ahead. You're still muted. No, you're still muted. Okay,
now
there
are we
you go.
okay? Good,
Yes.
thank you.
No problem.
I'd like to point out a particular situation that speaks to this redistricting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a congressman on the Eastern Shore, but they want to move the district from where he is, including where he is, across the Bay Bridge, and then down into Anne Arundel County. Now, if that's not doing violence to what we're trying to do here, I don't know what does. So I certainly will be with the group that's going to be analyzing and criticizing these various options. But that type of maneuver has got to stop. From the Eastern Shore across the Bay Bridge into Anne Arundel County to politically assassinate a incumbent Democrat or Republican, it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands up for this. Oh, Ms. Steve Mckay, Councilman Mckay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Call me an idealist. if you will. But we just really shouldn't be approaching these redistricting efforts, with any kind of partisan goals or objectives in mind. It's just wrong. It's not how this should be done. I think what we did in Frederick County should be a shining example for the state. We wound up with, very compact, very clean district lines. I'm losing, voters of my party, reliable precincts, and I support the effort because it was the right way to do it. And what I've seen with respect to the legislative map at the state level, I just hope that doesn't pass, and probably will in some form. When you see tendrils of districts reaching out, far afield into heavily Democratic, areas of one county or another, the objective is very clear, and it's a partisan objective, and it's just the wrong way to do it. It doesn't respect the individuals in the state and those districts, and I just hope it doesn't go forward in that manner.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to the next question because we only have a few more minutes and we had 4 questions. So all of you can answer this question. Maryland will receive at least $6 billion, including $4 billion for roads and highways. As a Frederick County elected official, what will you be advocating for, and what do you believe should be our priority? In terms of improvement, Route 15, I-270, 70, or any other? Let me start with Jen Gardner, County Executive Gardner.
And that mute button wouldn't go off. The county and the city's top priorities, I'm talking about the city of Frederick, but actually all the municipal mayors have agreed to this, that the top priority in the county is the widening of 15 through the city of Frederick from I-270 up to Maryland 26. So in the state's capital, the CTP, their transportation program, this year, they did put in funding to finish the engineering and design. So it would be my priority, and I believe it would be the top priority of everybody in the county, to have that project move forward with some construction funding. But it really can't do that until that design and engineering work is completed. So it certainly will not be immediate. We also do look to have some of these funds available for other projects in the community, ranging from the trails that Jerry spoke to other types of road improvements in the county. So there's certainly a lot of transportation needs in Frederick County. I don't know that I want to run through the list, but the top priority is a US 15 through the city of Frederick. And we have some things we have to finish, mentioned by Delegate Pippi. For instance, in Jefferson with the streetscape, I have some issues that need to be finished. So we hope to be able to use money for some of those projects as well.
County Executive Gardner, is there any other, Senator Young, looks like you have your hands up.
Yes, I'll be very quick. I think the delegation has pretty much approved the plan submitted by the county and the municipalities. And if anyone disagrees, they can speak up, but I think we're all pretty much in accord with what was spoken. I just have one little thing that I want to mention. The trails programs, some of them overlap where rails were. I do not think we should ever take the rails out. Unfortunately, the city's already started that. It should be trails and rails. Once we remove rails, there's no chance that rail traffic can ever come back. People protect the trails there. So I think the trails program should be trails and rails. Other than that, I'm in total agreement with the plan that the county submitted.
Thank you. County Council President, MC Kigonair.
Thanks. I will just echo what the county executive and Senator Young said. We have a presentation every summer by the Department of Transportation, and the council votes to prioritize, and our top priority is Route 15 through the city of Frederick. There's a smattering of other projects after that. This council has put a great emphasis on completing some of our trail systems to connect them, to provide the residents with an opportunity someday to get literally all the way from the C&O Canal up to Thurmont and places north to so that they can walk, bike, ride, whatever they want to do. That system, Councilmember Donald sits on that committee, and I'm going to let him speak to that because he also has his hand raised, and I'll shut up now.
Okay, so with that introduction, let's move to Councilmember Donald.
Thank you. First of all, I want to relieve Senator Young concern about our trail. The first trail we're doing from Frederick up to Walkersville goes alongside, it's parallel to the rail tracks. So it actually goes along there. So we're not ripping out anything. What the city does is the city's idea, but for the county's perspective, that's it. I want to chip in on it's not the higher priority, but it's one that's important to me in terms of transportation. If we could ever do this, if you're going west on 70 as the Baltimore port is expanding, you're going to see more traffic going west on 70. There is a clog south of Frederick where basically the lanes narrow down with 270 coming in, and then you get people coming down from 15 going south and then going west on 70, and it clogs up there and it goes down to 2 lanes, but that's only for about 1.5 miles when it expands to 3 lanes again going up over Braddock Heights. I think if we could just get that little section to stay 3 lanes the whole time, that would unclog quite a bit south of Frederick. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I'm stuck on that one quite a bit. So thank you. Delegate Delegate Pepe, you've been waiting for a while.
I'll be quick. I just want to round off what you've already heard. Route 15 is the priority. I think anyone who has a job outside their home and lives in Frederick County acknowledges that very severe problem. And it's good that we have, bipartisanship, delegates, senators, councilmen, county executive, all on the same page for many years now. So I hope we can move that priority forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Krim.
Thank you. So my job on appropriations is to serve as vice chair of the Transportation Environment Subcommittee. And we've had several briefings now on what is in this package that is coming from the federal government. And I think in February, that is the prediction. We're going to be getting some guidelines from the federal government on how we can use this funding. I have, of course, with Route 15, I work with Senator Huff to move that design forward to get that funded, and it was funded. But we also have to look at paratransit, which I have continue to bring up. And there are 2 sections in the federal regulations that may see an increase. I see it's 5 minutes, but I need to say this for the county executive. So, and also, we also are telling the department that highway user revenue is very important for local government. So hopefully in February, we're going to see some guidelines on how this money can be used and how we can assist our local government. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Mckay.
Thank you. Certainly echo the priority for Route 15, but also put a plug in for Liberty Town. There's been in 2 different areas. There's been some very preliminary design work that the state has accomplished for revisiting and redoing the sidewalks in Liberty Town, both from a walkability, accessibility, and ADA compliance perspective. It really is a challenging situation for pedestrians in Liberty Town, particularly in light of the traffic, situation in terms of speeds and large truck traffic going through downtown Liberty Town. The combination of that and the poor sidewalk situation is really challenging. And then in addition, anything that we can start, planning for in terms of trying to reroute some of that truck traffic and bypassing around the 7526 intersection would be a great help to the residents in that community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I understand that some of you do have to start heading out to Winchester Hall. So we had promised you a 9:15 drop, closing. So with that, we did have some additional questions, but if you have to leave now, I certainly understand it. You do have another meeting to go to. So thank you all again for all your time and attendance at this forum and your responses to our questions. We really appreciate all of that. And thank you again for attending. And with that, I will let you go. Thank you.